In 1924, in Japan, there was a place called Shibuya in Tokyo. A university professor named Hitsuburo Ueno lived there. He taught at Tokyo University. Professor Ueno was a kind and quiet man. His daily life was very regular. Every morning, he walked from his home to Shibuya Station and took a train to the university. In the afternoon, he took the train home. One day, a friend of Professor Ueno had a problem. This friend had a little Akita dog puppy, but he could not take care of it anymore. The Akita is a large Japanese dog, very strong and loyal. The friend asked Professor Ueno if he could adopt the puppy. Professor Ueno liked dogs very much, and he agreed. He brought the small, fluffy, brown puppy home. The professor's wife also lived in the house. At first, Mrs. Ueno was not happy. The puppy was very small. It would run around the house, bite things, and make small troubles. She thought taking care of a dog was hard work and would make the house dirty. She told the professor she did not want to keep the dog. But Professor Ueno loved the little dog very much. He took good care of it, fed it, and played with it. The puppy also loved the professor. It followed the professor everywhere, like a little shadow. Seeing her husband so happy, Mrs. Ueno's heart slowly softened. She saw the puppy's bright and friendly eyes. She started to help take care of the dog. Soon, she also fell in love with the little one. The family decided to keep it. The professor gave the puppy a name, Hachi. The number 8, Hachi in Japanese, is a lucky number. He hoped the puppy would have a long and healthy life. Little Hachi grew up happily in the professor's home. It grew from a playful puppy into a tall, handsome Akita dog. It had beautiful brown fur, pointed ears, and a curled tail. It was quiet and very smart. Hachi and the professor became best friends. Their bond was very deep. Every morning, when the professor prepared to go to work, Hachi would wag his tail excitedly. He would follow the professor to the front door. The professor would say, "Hachi, I'm going to work now." But Hachi wanted to go with him. So, the professor allowed Hachi to see him off to the train station. So, every morning became a fixed ritual. The professor put on his coat and picked up his briefcase. Hachi walked beside him. They left the house together, walked along the street, and headed to Shibuya Station. The walk was not long, about 10 minutes. Outside the station, the professor would stop, pat Hachi's head, and say, "Hachi, that's far enough. You go home now. I'll be back in the evening." Hachi would watch the professor enter the station building and disappear into the crowd. Then, Hachi would walk home slowly by himself. Every afternoon, about an hour before the professor's return, Hachi would become restless. He would go to the door and look outside. Mrs. Ueno knew Hachi wanted to go meet the professor. She would open the door, and Hachi would immediately run out. He knew the way. He would trot along the familiar streets all the way to Shibuya Station. Hachi would sit in a small square outside the station exit. He chose a good spot where he could clearly see people coming out of the station. His eyes would be fixed on the exit. At 5 p.m., the train from the direction of Tokyo University would arrive on time. A few minutes later, a large crowd of passengers would start pouring out. Hachi would search eagerly in the crowd. When he saw Professor Ueno's tall figure, he would immediately stand up. His tail would start wagging wildly, and he would make happy whining sounds. Seeing Hachi, a warm smile would always appear on the professor's face. No matter how tired he was from work that day, seeing his good friend waiting for him would lift his spirits. He would say loudly, "Hachi! Good boy!" Then he would walk to Hachi and pat his head and neck. Hachi would jump up, put his front paws on the professor, very excited. Then, they would walk home together. Along the way, the professor might talk to friends he met, and Hachi would patiently sit at his feet. This was the happiest time of their day. Day after day, year after year. Many station workers and regular commuters got to know this special pair. The ticket seller, the platform staff, the old lady at the small shop near the station, they all enjoyed seeing the professor and Hachi. For them, it became a beautiful and heartwarming sight at Shibuya Station. It represented loyalty, friendship, and the simple joy of daily life. This happy life lasted for about a year and a half. Hachi was about 1.5 years old, in the prime of his life. May 21st, 1925, was a seemingly ordinary Thursday. That morning, the weather was perhaps fine. Professor Ueno prepared for work as usual. He put on his coat and picked up his briefcase. Hachi ran over, ready to see him off as he did every day. But that day, Hachi's behavior was unusual. He was not just excitedly wagging his tail as usual, he seemed restless and anxious. He followed closely at the professor's feet, whining, and even gently held the professor's trouser leg with his mouth, as if trying to stop him from leaving. Professor Ueno thought it was strange, but he thought maybe Hachi just wanted to play more. He patted Hachi, comforted him, and left as usual. Hachi followed him to the station. When saying goodbye, Hachi's barks were louder than usual, and there seemed to be a sense of reluctance in his eyes. The professor entered the station, waved goodbye, and looked back. However, tragedy struck at Tokyo University that day. Professor Ueno was giving a lecture to his colleagues in a meeting room. Suddenly, he felt a severe headache and collapsed on the floor. His colleagues were shocked and immediately called a doctor. The doctor diagnosed a cerebral hemorrhage, a very serious condition. Despite the doctor's best efforts, Professor Ueno passed away that afternoon. He never woke up. At the home in Shibuya, no one knew this terrible news. In the afternoon, as the time approached 5 o'clock, Hachi began to show his usual anticipation. He went to the door and looked at Mrs. Ueno. She opened the door, and Hachi shot out like an arrow towards the station. He sat in his usual spot, waiting full of expectation. The train arrived on time. People began to pour out. Hachi stood up, his tail wagging slightly, his eyes scanning every face. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. The crowd gradually thinned, and finally, the station exit became empty. The professor did not appear. Hachi remained standing there, watching, waiting. The sky gradually darkened, and street lights came on. The station staff saw Hachi still there and thought it was odd, but they did not yet know about the professor's death. Finally, a relative of Mrs. Ueno came to the station and found Hachi. The family's faces were marked with tears and great sorrow. They said softly to Hachi, "Hachi, let's go home." They took Hachi home. The house was filled with a sad atmosphere. People came in and out, crying softly. Hachi sensed something was wrong. He hid in a corner, watching everything uneasily. But he did not understand the meaning of death. To a dog, his owner had simply not returned. The next day, Professor Ueno's funeral was held at home. Many people came, all very sad. Hachi was kept in another room to avoid disturbing the ceremony. He heard strange sounds, smelled unfamiliar scents, and became even more unsettled. In the afternoon, as it neared 5 o'clock, Hachi's precise internal clock rang again. He wanted to go out. He scratched at the door. A relative, looking into his eager eyes, couldn't bear to refuse. He opened the door. Hachi immediately ran to the station. He sat again in that familiar square and began his wait. He believed his owner would surely walk out of that door today. But Professor Ueno would never appear again. From then on, Hachi's life consisted of only one thing: waiting. The professor's family was deeply grieved. They tried to make Hachi understand. They let Hachi smell the professor's clothes and said softly, "He's gone. He won't come back." But Hachi did not understand human language. He only knew that waiting and searching were the only things he could think to do. He believed his master would return one day. Soon after, due to financial and other reasons, Professor Ueno's family decided to move away from the old house in Shibuya and live elsewhere. The new place was small and not suitable for a large dog. Moreover, it was very far from Shibuya's station. But they did not abandon Hachi. They entrusted Hachi to a former gardener of the professor named Kakuzaburo Kobayashi. Mr. Kobayashi lived in Shibuya and was willing to take care of Hachi. More importantly, he knew Hachi's habit and allowed him to continue going to the station to wait. So, Hachi began his life in a new home. Mr. Kobayashi was good to Hachi, giving him food and shelter. But for Hachi, Mr. Kobayashi's house was just a place to sleep and eat. His heart, his entire spirit, remained at the square in front of Shibuya's station. Every afternoon, no matter the weather, Hachi would set out on the path he had walked countless times. He could walk this path with his eyes closed. He passed the same streets, saw the same shops, and met the same people. Arriving at the station, he would sit in the same spot, the place where he and the professor had last parted. His posture was almost always the same, facing the exit, body upright, ears slightly forward, eyes unblinking. At 5 in the afternoon, when the whistle of that train sounded, Hachi's whole body would tense up instantly. He would stand up, take a few steps forward, his tail wagging slightly in anticipation. His eyes would become exceptionally bright, rapidly searching every face that poured out. He sniffed the air, hoping to catch that most familiar scent. The crowd came and went like the tide. From crowded to sparse, until only a few late passengers remained. Hope faded slowly with the setting sun. The look in Hachi's eyes would change from expectation to confusion, then to deep disappointment. He would let out a soft sigh, or so people felt he did, then slowly lie down, resting his head on his front paws, but his eyes still fixed on the exit. Sometimes, he would wait until very late, until the station became very quiet. The people at the station gradually learned the full story. The ticket seller, every time he saw Hachi, felt sad. He would say to his colleagues, "Look, Hachi is here again. He's still waiting for Professor Ueno." They would shake their heads, marveling at the dog's loyalty. The old lady who sold drinks near the station would often bring a bowl of water for Hachi to drink, and sometimes give him some food scraps. She would tell customers, "This is a very loyal dog. His master died years ago, but he still comes to wait every day." The story spread around Shibuya Station. Many daily commuters got to know Hachi. When they passed by, they would give him a sympathetic look or whisper, "Poor thing." Seasons changed, time passed. In spring, cherry blossoms bloomed and fell near the station, petals sometimes landing on Hachi. In summer, the sun was scorching hot. Hachi would pant with his tongue out but still kept his post. In autumn, strong winds blew fallen leaves that hit his body. In winter, heavy snow fell. Hachi's body would be covered with a layer of snow, almost turning into a snow sculpture. Only those black eyes still peered through the snow curtain, staring steadfastly at the exit. His perseverance moved everyone who saw him. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Hachi gradually moved from a dog in his prime to old age. His movements became slower, his fur lost some of its shine. and white hairs appeared around his mouth. But his ritual of waiting never stopped. He became a living legend at Shibuya Station, a symbol of loyalty. Time passed, and by 1932, Hachi had been waiting for a full 7 years. His story was passed around locally by word of mouth but was not yet known nationwide. At this time, a reporter named Hirakichi Saito came to Shibuya. He was originally there for other business. At the station, he saw this old dog sitting quietly. It had a special quality about it, calm yet determined. Mr. Saito asked the station staff about it. The staff told him, "That's Hachi. He's been waiting here for his owner for 7 years." His owner was Professor Ueno from Tokyo University. He passed away a long time ago. Reporter Saito was deeply shocked. A dog, spending such a long part of its life waiting for someone who would never return. What kind of feeling was this? He interviewed station staff, nearby shopkeepers, and Mr. Kobayashi, Hachi's current caretaker. He collected all the stories about Hachi and Professor Ueno. After returning, reporter Saito, with great emotion, wrote a long article. On October 4, 1932, this article was published in one of Japan's most important newspapers, the Asahi Shimbun. The title was very direct, touching story of an old dog, 7 years of waiting for his deceased master. This article was like a stone thrown into a calm pond, creating huge ripples. People all over Japan read Hachi's story. They were moved to tears by the loyalty of this Akita dog. Loyalty, faithfulness, not forgetting kindness, these were virtues highly respected in Japanese culture. Hachi became the living embodiment of these virtues. Overnight, Hachi went from being a local star in Shibuya to a national hero. People from all over Japan came specifically to Shibuya Station, not to take a train, but to see Hachi with their own eyes. They watched him with respect from a distance, not daring to disturb him too much. Many brought food and treats to feed him. Painters and photographers came too. They painted portraits of Hachi and took photos. Hachi's story was written into elementary school moral education textbooks. Public attention also brought practical help. People spontaneously donated money, hoping to do something for Hachi. Someone suggested building a bronze statue of him, so his spirit would live on forever. This proposal received an enthusiastic response. A famous sculptor, Teru Ando, accepted the task. In April 1934, Hachi's bronze statue was unveiled in a grand ceremony in front of Shibuya Station. It was a big event. Many important people and ordinary citizens attended. Hachi himself, the actual dog, was also brought to the scene. He sat quietly in front of the crowd, right next to his own statue. He looked somewhat confused, not understanding why so many people were surrounding him. The statue was lifelike, depicting Hachi sitting in waiting, head held high, full of expectation and loyalty. The base of the statue was inscribed with the words "Faithful Dog Hachiko." At the unveiling ceremony, people gave speeches praising Hachi's virtues. From that day on, Shibuya Station gained a permanent landmark. After the statue was erected, Hachi continued his daily waiting. But his body was getting older and weaker. Nearly 10 years of wind, frost, rain, snow, and 10 years of persistent waiting had taken their toll on his life. On the cold night of March 7, 1935, Hachi, as usual, slowly left the station after waiting in vain, heading back to Mr. Kobayashi's house. He was probably very tired. On the morning of March 8, people found Hachi in a small alley near Shibuya Station. He was lying in the snow and had stopped breathing. He died peacefully, as if asleep. A veterinary examination concluded he died from advanced cancer and filariasis, heartworm. He was 11 years old, some say 12. For a large dog, this was already a long life. Many believe that until the very last moment, he was probably still hoping. News of Hachi's death again made national newspapers. People said, Hachi has finally stopped waiting. He has gone to heaven to see his master, Professor Ueno. At the street corner where he died, people spontaneously placed many flowers. Hachi's body was treated with great care. His skin was preserved and made into a taxidermy specimen. Initially, the specimen was kept at the Tokyo Science Museum in Ueno. Later, it was moved to a more commemorative location. Today, Hachi's taxidermy specimen is displayed at the National Museum of Nature and Science in Tokyo for future generations to see. His bones were cremated, and some of the ashes were buried at Aoyama Cemetery in Tokyo, right next to the grave of his master, Professor Ueno. Today, Shibuya Station is one of the busiest train stations in the world. Outside the station, at the huge crosswalk, hundreds of thousands of people pass through every day. Right in the center of this bustling modern city, Hachi's bronze statue stands quietly, becoming the famous meeting point known as the Shibuya Hachiko exit. People often say, "Let's meet at the Hachiko statue." Whether it's friends meeting, couples dating, or tourists gathering, the Hachiko statue is the most popular meeting spot. The statue itself is well maintained. Its nose has become shiny from being touched by countless people. People believe touching the Hachiko statue brings good luck. Flowers are often placed around the statue, and sometimes there are dog toys, tributes from visitors around the world. Hachi's story has been made into movies several times. The most famous are the 1987 Japanese film Hachiko Monogatari and the 2009 Hollywood adaptation Hachi, A Dog's Tale. These movies have spread Hachi's story all over the world, touching hundreds of millions of viewers. The story of a dog who waited for his master his whole life transcends language and cultural barriers, becoming an eternal symbol of love and loyalty.